Testing, there we go. For some reason it did not want to recognize my microphone all of a sudden. Hey, this is the Expert Layman, and I'm going to be going through my daily quests. Oh, somebody got the Nightmare Vine over there. But since doing dailies is not the most exciting thing in the world, I have another topic I'm going to be covering as I go. I picked up all the quests in chat, and then I just headed up here, and while I was setting up the stream, I got, as you can see, my orb is glowing quite a bit because people are killing them near me and I get credit. And I got a couple of Nightmare Vines, so the let me check my audio real quick here. Okay, looks good. The what do you call it? The nether residue. So I already have a bunch of those, and that's kind of the one that's a pain in the butt, getting all the nether residue. And as usual, I'll be playing on a gamepad, and I will go ahead and get started. This is the one where you bring out the fire ember, and you just have to be in the proximity of these things. And I switched back to my smite spec because I'm farming Magister's Terrace. But that is too loud. That is probably getting picked up on my mic. So that I can either heal or DPS, a normal or heroic. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do heroic, but I got a good shakedown in a group with the tank wearing mostly DPS gear, 2 warlocks constantly tapping, and a DPS warrior. In addition to... So there was so much damage being taken, and they were using no CC, and this was on heroic. And I managed to make it through with my... what is it? 116 item level. Oh, damn it. Rude. But I do need them, so it's not that big a deal. And I managed to get through it on heroic as heals, so... because I'm not fully heal spec'd. I was concerned that might be a problem, but, you know, survived a worst case scenario. That's a good way to know for sure. Yeah, the first time I did this, I thought you had to get 10 stacks. I think I've got like 5 or 6 already. I got a bunch from people just killing them near me while I was setting up the stream, which is kind of nice. There's a stealth rogue from the Alliance over here. The very nice thing about the smite spec is you basically can't run out of mana as long as you're killing stuff occasionally. And I thought I'd put up the details of what I'm doing as I do it, and of course I got the anti-micro up. And I put the item where my... oh, the thing with these guys is, you don't have to actually channel the whole thing. You can just like click it once and they'll go through the whole procedure, so you can start casting a spell on them. Try to have it hit after they get nerfed, because they're elite at like 15,000 health, and then they go down to like 6,000. Best way to say sorry is just be nice. And, you know, maybe help him with a kill. Manners cost nothing. I guess I'll go turn this in just in case something bad happens and I lose it. I tend to use my mouse a little bit more when the terrain is uneven. If I'm in a dungeon or farming, it's not really necessary, but when they make the ground this uneven... Oh, and by the way, Blizzard is evil. Doomlord's up, and there is an herb right there, well within his aggro radius. Just I wonder if there's still bones over there from all the people that attempted. No, maybe that was before a reset. But that's just evil. Sure, it wasn't intentional. Which kind of, we'll get. That kind of leads to the microaggressions topic. But I figured I'll get on a flight or something and get rolling on that. Yeah, you just drag it in here once you've got 8. It'll also turn green when it's done. And now I just need 1 more fell blood and then to nerf some initiates. Yeah, since your bubble is affected by your spell power, I used to always hit my bubble and then trinket and then attack, and then I realized, oh, well, oops, I forgot something. Come on. Let's try that again. And I'm already back to full mana. And I need 1 more blood. Oh, there gotta be one of them suckers around here. Oh, yeah, you definitely want to use your ground mount when, even though I don't have it right now, you want to use your ground mount when you have the little fire ember following you around, because if you take off, he'll despawn and you'll have to start over. Yeah. Glad the blood is 100% drop. That would be really annoying if it wasn't. It is kind of cool just being able to de-elite. Yeah, he's got like almost 17,000 health right now. And 5,500 or 5,600. And these 2 quests are done. Now I would normally fly on my slow-ass Kmart mount and just hit herbs on the way to the next location. But since I've already got 5 of them, I am going to go ahead. That was blood for blood. And blast the gateway. So I am instead just going to go ahead and hearth. Ooh. Nightmare Vine is up again. Not get another residue out of that. Now I will hearth. I like to keep my hearth at Stonebreaker, because when you go there, I got, you know, get water, repair, it's got crafting stuff here. You're right next to Shat, and the PvP daily is right over here. But overall, it's really convenient. But what I think I will do is I will go all the way up to Nether Storm. And do that one. Because you have the Sun Fury attack plans, all the Sun Furies will drop, which is funny because it's weird having a quest for what I've killed tens of thousands of these things just farming. And then I'll hit the mana cells, and then I will go down to Did I not pick that one up? That one kind of sucks anyway. I might just skip that. I wonder if I can stop and chat and pick that up. I don't know how I missed that one. Shoot. Let's see. I probably will land. Sometimes you can't predict. It'll just fly by even though you said next stop. Is that the one that's over here? Oh yeah, I got my Warbear on the Priest. Even though I've run it at least a couple dozen times on my Warrior, I do not have it on my Warrior, and even though I've only run it on the Priest, I don't know, less than half that, somehow I got it. And now I will head up to Area 52. There's an interesting phenomenon when you have people that are just they're invested in something fringe, and their investment is at a level that is, you could say, unhealthy or extreme, that they will actually notice things that other people don't. The problem is they will take it too far. This is especially true with like conspiracy nutters. I used to listen to Art Bell back in my less skeptical days, and he had this remote viewer that would come on, and the guy had this weird pattern of being right, but then going a few steps too far and kind of screwing it up. One good example was before the Segway came out. You know, that's the what do you call it? I guess they call them hoverboards now, but before they came out, like, there was really nothing else even close to like that. So he got on and said, you know, when people were talking about it, nobody knew what it was. They just knew the name. He said he had remote viewed the Segway, and that it was essentially a personal transportation device, but it's not like a bicycle or a scooter or a go-kart or anything like that. It was completely different, and it was capable of, it had an agility that almost seemed supernatural. And if he had stopped there, it probably would have been, you know, I have not looked to see if anybody's leaving comments or anything. Probably not. No. If he had stopped there, he would have been pretty much smack on. But then he talked about how this was going to change the face of law enforcement, and they were going to design cities around these things. And then I think he might have said the technology was extraterrestrial. It was something like that. It's like if you just stopped, you would have freaking nailed it, but you had to keep going. And I'm not sure if the InfoWars guy, Alex Jones, is allowed to be talked about on YouTube, but he's kind of in that camp to where if he just stopped, instead of going on to all the way to step 10, if he just stopped at like 6 or 7, probably would have been pretty accurate. So this brings me to microaggressions. And a paper on this basically describes it as, let me read. Microaggressions are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons, and here's where they should have stopped, based solely on their marginalized group membership. Such a weird place to draw the line. So up until that point, that's nailed it. That's just part of normal human social interaction. And I'm well aware of this because as an autistic person, I did not know how to assert myself at all because I didn't realize there was this, I don't want to say hostility, but we feel each other out through, you know, you could say mild aggression. And someone who is completely incapable of expressing that, it's like they're not really even there. You're like a pushover. You don't cast a presence into the social environment if you can't, not necessarily assert, you know, dominance, but just assert your personal being and that you have, you know, like I said, it's not the easiest thing to describe, but when I talk about this stuff, it tends to make people uncomfortable because it sounds like I'm taking. Well, people will understand that I'm describing things that they also do, but I've done a really bad job of saying it's normal and healthy, especially guys who kind of feel each other out through aggression. Like a lot of guys who, a lot of the best friendships may have started with, you know, some kind of contest or, you know, aggression or even like a fight. So it's not, you know, I would say at nominal levels, it's part of normal social interaction. But it exists on a spectrum, and when it gets pretty far removed from, like, the healthy ways we feel each other out, a lot of people would call it toxic, or you know, like a rager in a game who just starts, like, flipping out would be an extreme example of that. And it's kind of hard. We like to think that these are in separate categories. And here you just got to kill geologists. And we don't like to think that it's on the spectrum that also includes us. But I do want to state that, you know, at nominal levels, it's normal and healthy, and society probably wouldn't work without it. But you get a gray area between, like, the normal and healthy and what I would describe as toxic, to where someone is literally just going around trying to... And there's a couple different drives, but basically knock other people down to feel better about themselves, or they are very angry and unhappy, and they know that other people, on a deep level, they know that other people aren't like that, and that seems like a great injustice. So in a weird, I suppose, attempt to balance the scales, they try to upset other people. And these things, these categories overlap, and it's kind of hard to separate them. Because they could both be happening, or either one, and there's also some other things going on there. So, one thing that I would highly recommend is an add-on called Player Notes. And I have 3 categories in my Player Notes. I have dubious, toxic, and super toxic. So I kind of have a yellow... Hey, there we go. I have a... Oops, that one. Kind of have a yellow flag system. Because there are certain behaviors that aren't... It could be accidental, but more likely than not, it's a sign of someone who will head into the unhealthy territory. A good simple example is when a tanker, you get into a pug, and as soon as you get in and everybody's there and ready to go, either the tank or the healer suddenly needs to go AFK for a few minutes. Now, oh, hey, herb. Now that's a thing that could happen. You know, people do have things happen in their life. But the frequency with which it happens is way higher than it should be. And the fact that it happens with tanks and healers, like, vastly more frequently than it does with the DPS, is also an indicator that these are... the vast majority of these are unlikely to be genuine. Oh, did not get a thing off that. Because you would expect that these were all just, you know, random occurrences, that it would happen just as much with the DPS as it does with the tank and heals. Oh, god damn it. But it doesn't. And how long they're gone is also an indicator. I mean, if it's like less than a minute, or even less than 2 minutes, you know, maybe, you know. But if they're gone for like 3, 4, or 5 minutes, it's almost certainly... Oh yeah, I got up here. Heading to Evergrove. It's almost certainly... people... Like I said, it's hard to tell whether it's people just trying to bring misery into other people's day, or whether it's a demonstration of power over the other people. Because if a DPS is like, hey, I'm going to be AFK for a few minutes, we'll be like, cool, we're just going to go. There really isn't much motivation to pull that. But if the whole group has to wait on you, that's sort of like a power play. So with those things, you know, if it's just a couple of minutes, I'll add dubious, because it's like you don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes, because people who display, well, let's just say, who engage in microaggressions, you don't, how aggressively they do this will be relative to how much they think they can get away with in a particular situation. For example, I found myself in like a 10-man raid like Tarzan with someone who I have flagged as toxic in a 5-man. And then I discovered that, oh, well, when they're running with their guild in a raid, they are extremely well behaved. But if you run into this guy into a pug 5-man, he's going to be a freaking douche. So that the waiting is a sign. The passive aggressive withholding of buffs is a sign. Like if you like, it's not hard to do your job and buff your group. It's really not. But most of the time, a lot of aggression will manifest in, oops, I forgot. And from that person, most of these people aren't consciously aware that they're doing it, which makes it more complicated. People, you might notice that the same people who accidentally wipe their group will do it with some regularity. At which point it's almost certainly not an accident. Another way is somebody spams looking for 2 DPS for whatever dungeon, and you hit them within like a couple of seconds of the post. And then like 2 minutes later say, sorry, we're full. And another yellow flag is when they give you a long explanation of why they can't fit you in the group. It's like, okay, I got, when you didn't invite me, I understood. You were full. You know, you didn't need me. That's no big deal. You weren't even obligated to respond. Because not responding is a message that you didn't need me. So it's, to go through a whole thing about it starts to feel like they're dunking on you for the fact that you didn't get in, which is a little weird. And then there was another thing, and this happened a lot with, did I get one? No. With anything in the Caverns of Time, because there are people that, it's kind of like bridge trolls. The bridge is the only way to get across. And the Caverns of Time is a bridge, especially because a lot of people needed to... Once you do your Caverns of Time stuff, people typically don't go back, so it's really hard to get groups for it. So a lot of people would form groups, and almost every time, once you'd get in there and be ready to pull, someone would have to go AFK, or someone would have some kind of thing, and just the number of delays that stacked up in that dungeon in particular were staggering. And it was because they had a captive audience. Like I said, the environment will dictate how a person behaves. And if they know that people will put up with a lot of crap to get this stupid thing over with, they will turn up the knob. Oh, and if I see a normal Magister's Terrace run while I'm doing this, I will bail on what I'm doing to get in there. This is about the rep farm. Oh, hey, there we go. And what you're doing is that Bashir phasing device. And this is for the quest intercepting the mana cells. So you hit the phasing device. And then you can only interact with the phase worms. But you are looking for these little boxes. And the edges are kind of glowy compared to the rest of the boxes. And it's pretty cutthroat. And there's one. Nice thing about the priest. Beer. And get my box. Notice how the edges are darker on the ones you're looking for. They're lighter. Eh. So the player notes are great. Oh, and the other thing you'd see is someone is spamming for a group, and you'll respond right away. And then they'll say, you know, usually there'll be quite a delay, and then they'll say, you know, sorry, full, or they'll get wordy for some reason. And then if they feels like there's some shenanigans going on, I'll set a timer on my phone for like 10 minutes. No, I either 10 or 15 minutes. I haven't done this in a while. I haven't needed to. And then I will /who them. And a lot of times, they're not even in the dungeon. They're still sitting in chat. Like, people will literally say they're forming a group and then reject a bunch of people, and they were never even going to run it. They just wanted to basically reject people. Then again, I want to make a distinction between, you know, toxicity and trolling. In my opinion, a troll has an audience that appreciates their antics. Doesn't have to be a big audience, but, you know, you have to be doing this for the benefit of more than just you, or maybe you and your douchebag friend, you know? A lot of people will say that they're just trolling, but nobody's laughing, not even them. But occasionally you'll run into like real messed up people who will literally, the tank is like, you know, I'll be back in a minute, I got a thing, you know, and it'll be well into the dungeon and they won't be gone for very long. But as soon as they go, you'll see like a hunter misdirect onto the healer, pull a group, and then feign death, and then everybody dies. And they say, whoops. It's like, so you accidentally targeted the healer, accidentally hit misdirect, and then accidentally feign death. Yeah. Not looking too likely. Or, you know, I've seen this twice recently, where in Magister's Terrace, where someone will come up, and it's been a priest both times. And you know what? They were both healing. But they will come up and fear bomb a group. And you can kind of aim your fear bomb, because they'll typically, at least for the first, you know, 15, 25 yards, they make a beeline away from the epicenter of your fear. So you can, especially if there's several of them, you can almost guarantee that some of them are going to end up right in the direction that you want them to go. And basically aim them into another group and wipe the group. I've seen that twice recently. And it's like, there's no reason to use your fear at that point. So that would I would put in the realm of super toxic. Ironically, just people saying douchey things, I really don't care. I kind of follow the model of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And occasionally you'll find people that sound really toxic. I mean, not so much in World of Warcraft, but in other games where they're just like, they sound really toxic in chat, but they're playing cooperatively. Oh, my guild's having this conversation. Oh, I thought they were talking about ZA. I'm like, ZA? Huh? Pretty much got everything I wanted out of there on my priest and warrior. I even got the parry trinket for my warrior, which is pretty cool. So I will be going and doing the multi-phase survey next. The Sorry, people in guild ripping on and I changed guilds recently because there were a few very toxic people who would, one I talked about on stream before, where this person would deliberately be tanking and then deliberately not use any threat generating abilities and just auto attack and wait for the DPS to make a normal attack, pull aggro, and then not taunt it off them until they're dead. Like literally just getting their toxic jollies out of getting DPS killed. That is something that I've seen not that often, but occasionally. And that's really messed up. And it kind of evolved from douchey DPS who will just blast right away, and the tank's saying, you know, you're going to be like that, I'm not going to save you. And then it kind of evolved into, I'm actually just going to preemptively be a dick to people because I don't want to, you know, trust is vulnerability. And if you trust that someone's not going to be a douche, you know, you do leave yourself open. But a life where you don't have any trust for other people is pretty miserable. So they will just preemptively be a dick to anyone who might be a dick to them to make sure that they never end up on the receiving end of dickishness, I guess you could say. But there were one guy. We were in Karzan, and we had 3 warriors in the group, and they were all doing DPS on Shade of Iran. If you know anything about Shade of Iran, there is no aggro table. He will just randomly pick, you know, targets throughout the fight, so he is untankable, and threat is irrelevant. It's like, oh hey, can we get a Miter Kings on the warriors, seeing as, you know, there's no aggro table here to worry about. And he wouldn't do it. And he's moving around and, you know, buffing other people. It's like, hey, can we get that? And I just called it out. It's like, this passive-aggressive withholding of buffs is always weird, which is a nicer version of what I said in looking for group chat, which is where people talk a lot. And I said it's... I forget exactly how I said it. Bitch toxic. It's where you're angry and you want to express aggression on other people, but you're too much of a pussy to do it directly. So you use these passive-aggressive techniques where, you know, in aggression through inaction. And the guy flipped out. I don't even know what he was saying because he was like eating his mic and screaming at the same time. It's just like what you'd hear in an old, like, I don't know, like Call of Duty stream with a 12-year-old freaking out, except this guy's in his 30s or 40s. It's just so sad. And then of course, you know, I didn't get a single heal from him the rest of the run. And he was somebody I was already avoiding, and I wouldn't have signed up for the raid if I'd known he'd be there, but he ended up coming, and it's like, oh crap. And his partner, wife, I believe, is more subtle as you would expect, because women are just more socially adept than men on average, and particularly in his case. But although I did not experience this, I caught many a conversation where people were saying, I looked through the logs, and somehow she didn't heal me through the entire raid. And this would be in 25-man stuff. Like, somehow. And it's just such a bitch move. Actually, it's not a bitch move when a woman does it. It's a bitch move when a guy does it. Because the reason we call a guy a bitch is when you're a man, but you express aggression like a woman, you're a bitch. And one of the things that put her on my radar, this might seem micro, but the thing where nobody will go to the dungeon when you join a group for something and you see that you're up in like Netherstorm and everybody else, and you're doing a Coil Fang, and everybody's either in Shat or in Zanger Marsh, and you're like, well, there isn't much point in me flying down there, but you know what? I like, you know, making the effort, you know, just showing that you respect the group by not continuing to do whatever you're doing is nice. So I started flying down there, and by the time I got to that post, whatever it is, everybody was still sitting in chat, and the one person in Zangermarsh was still questing, because I could see Questy telling me about, you know, stuff that they were completing. And it's like, so at that point, I'm like, I'm just going to observe this. Let's see how far this goes. So I just basically just stood at the flight master there and just watched the dots on the map. And watching everybody, you know, like, oh, hey, is anybody going to the dungeon? Oh, yeah, I can get there. And then the person who's running around questing is like, oh, I got lost. I'll find it here in a minute. And it's this weird power game of, it's almost like getting to a party on time. Like the cool people, you know, show up late. And it's along those lines. But it was like, oh, hey, this is how you're having your power competition, by seeing who can stay in chat and who's the bitch that's going to go summon. Like, this kind of sad stuff. And the thing is that same player was saying that she runs the Shadow Priest and also heals on another character. Rarely breaks a parse of 10. Yeah. And a couple people have tried to say, you know, hey, you know, it's typically it's either your gear, your spec, or your rotation. And Shadow Priests have, you know, the variable rotation, so it can be a little rough for a lot of people who aren't really into gaming. But she categorically stated, well, I know it's not my gear, my spec, or my rotation. I have to figure out why my DPS is so low. It's like, well, not if you've eliminated the 3 things it could be, you're not. Well, she got chapped when I came into my Shadow Priest. Like 10 or 15 item levels lower than her, and was almost doubling her damage. Like, I was the enemy after. Oh, a little thing with the multi-phase spectrographic goggles. If you put them on before you enter the zone, you won't see anything. You'll have to like take them off and put them back on again. I'm not sure why that is, but I discovered that the hard way. It's like, where are they? They're nowhere. Then you're just looking for these fiery things. Fortunately, there's like a, I don't know. There's a cooldown to use them once you put them on. I know somebody's going to come up and get this while I'm waiting for my... There we go. Haha. And I also noticed that a lot of people's draw distance is like really low. Or lower than mine anyway. Like, I'll see them like fly by stuff like, did you not see that? It's like, I guess they didn't. And I guess the point of this is getting the player notes and, you know, marking people. You can use whatever system you want, but in mine we're marking them as dubious, and then, you know, I might, you know, I will still group with people who have a dubious tag, but they're under a little extra scrutiny, because if they they collect a few yellow flags, I'll just move them into toxic, because the odds of all of those things being accidents starts to approach 0. And there's no way to know exactly how bad they might get. And there are people that will, you know, and I like having my party frames, because it'll show me what they're targeting and what they're casting. And I'll watch like a healer just kind of stand there and not heal. And they don't claim to have been AFK or anything, and just not heal until the tank goes down. And then they'll say in chat, "Oh, you went down so fast." And it's like, You mean him slowly getting worked down over 10 seconds? That was fast? That's the power of the healer, is to let people die. And you'll see it in like Discord, you know, chat and stuff, where they'll joke about having the power of life and death, and some jokes aren't entirely jokes. So a comment in the old, I guess I still have a couple alts parked over there, but my main characters, which are the warrior and priest, I moved over to a guild that actually kind of has their shit together, in that, at least in the fact that if you're not performing, they're not bringing you. Whereas the previous guild, it doesn't matter how bad your performance is. No, you know, they will bring people anyway, because they're just... I do wonder why they keep certain people around that are just so... their performance is so low that it prevents... Oh, I guess... did I get my last one? I did. Freak that guy out. He didn't think he was getting it. Why they're kept around. And I think it's... because they have some decent, you know, even a few, like, exceptional players. Of course, most of them have, you know, characters in other guilds that actually succeed. But there is this appeal of being a big fish in a small pond. Whereas if they go to guilds that are actually selecting based on ability, they're no longer special. And in fact, they might, you know, there might be a couple people better at what they do than they are. And that might hurt their self-image. Funny thing is, right at the same time I moved over to this other guild, somebody else moved over. And we had a nice conversation, let's say. And part of it was around their Tarzan runs, where even though the group has an average item level of like 125 to 130, they will still spend like 3 or 4 hours in there wiping many times. And it's like, oh, we're just having fun. It's like, in closer inspections makes it appear that they're each taking turns wiping the group. It's this weird codependent, toxic, you know, sabotage thing. And they seem to get joy out of the people that are upset by that. And people are understandably upset by that, because it's freaking stupid. They also do things where you'll show up and there'll be a couple people in greens and somebody who's not even 70 yet. It's like, I did not sign up to carry people through that don't belong here, and you've got so many of them that this is going to now difficult content, because we're essentially like 7 or 8 manning it. Like, I didn't sign up for that. And if you say anything, it's kind of like a dog pile. And then they'll act like they carried you. It's like, no. I don't go into a dungeon, I don't go into a raid, unless I'm at a gear level and skill level where I can carry my own weight. I do not like run-throughs, I don't like carries. You know, I don't care for the whole boosting thing. I think it's a really good way to be really bad at your class. And you run into the people who got boosted up, and they'll get into dungeons and not even know, like, the basic stuff. Now, I believe that was my last... I still have another residue to pick up, but I will get the rest of that on the island. I will go to chat and turn my stuff in. I'll put my headpiece back on. But yeah, I suppose I can open that up. Wait, where is that? So here are the people. I guess toxic AF is one of the categories, but and sometimes I'll get specific. Like, I actually remember this one. got through Botanica, and we had, since there's 5 bosses and the last one dropped like 3 items, there were 8 in total shards, and then he had us roll, gave each of us 1, and kept the other half. And I was like, hey, what about the rest of them? And then he left group. It's like, oh, you knew exactly what you were doing. Yeah, weird that I didn't mark 1 spammer. I guess sometimes I get a little more specific. But yeah, Battlegrounds is a place where people, like I said, environment, it doesn't dictate behavior, but if somebody is cryptotoxic or, you know, wants to be toxic, but they don't want to have it affect their ability to get the gear they want, as soon as they're in a context where they can get away with it without repercussions, they will change. And I've seen this a couple of times where people from my server will assume that it's safe to be like super toxic and sabotage, especially in Warsong Gulch, their group's success. And that was what was really awful about the Battlegrounds when they originally introduced Cross-Realm Battlegrounds. Not all of them? I guess so. And now I will head to the island. Is the behavior got so much worse. And it is kind of a trade. Like, I do not want the freaking Dungeon Finder. The Cross-Realm Dungeon Finder, because, yeah, you can get groups faster, but the quality of your teammates is so much lower. Because, you know, hey, they see that there's nobody from their server, why should they give a crap what anybody thinks? And the behavior kind of goes along with that. But I also, you know, the more subtle things is the DPS attacking early, or hitting an early multi-shot, or chain lightning, or, you know, I've even seen people like clicking off their salvation buff and then trying to pull off the tank and making sport out of making the tank's job as hard as possible. You know, hunters seem, I don't know if the psychology of people who choose hunters, or whether hunters just have the best tools, but just watching them just blast right off and not immediately feigning death, waiting till the mob runs all the way to them, and they just happen to be standing right next to the healer, so that if they can keep this target away from the tank long enough, and if the tank can either keep trying to establish threat on the stuff that he's already fighting, or he can try to go pick that up. And if he tries to go and pick it up, that hunter will switch targets to the other things and start blasting them and try to pull them off. And just basically run the tank around for their own amusement. And that's a big part of why, you know, Pallies stack so much spell power, especially if they have like a 5-man set where they'll have a crazy amount of spell power just to deal with the douchebags. Of course, that makes the healer's job harder. To be honest, I have a threat set that is not much more. It's mostly just PvP gear. But I still have a fair amount of avoidance. I have a lot of health, and I'm incredible. But I also have, you know, like 1300 attack power and tank gear unbuffed. But that does really help. But if you have some DPS that are really pumping, like I did a tank to Magister's Terrace, and the DPS were doing between 1500 and like 2200 DPS on boss fights. Without that threat gear, there's no way I would have been able to hold against them. And since things are dying so quickly, the extra drain on the healer's mana is not an issue, because the fights don't last very long because stuff's dying so quick. So it is a weird kind of balance, and you definitely need different sets. And that's one of the places where tanks, and I want to be generous and say some of them just don't understand that your raid set is not a good thing to wear in a 5-man. Because when you're in a raid, you have you have the full set of buffs, which means the DPS has salvation. You have all kinds of buffs that help increase your ability to generate threat, and you can, and it's understood, you know, that the DPS shouldn't blast right away, and there's lots of people to ridicule them if they do. But in a 5-man, where you don't really have any significant buffs to your threat, and you're taking so little damage that you're not getting much rage or mana, sometimes they will wear it on purpose, and then they will do this thing where they generate just enough threat to keep the mobs off the healer, but no more, and just spend the run trying to get the DPS killed. I remember recently that was in the was Heroic Botanica, and I realized, and I was on my warrior, and I realized the tank was just trying to get the DPS killed. But I'm a very careful person, so I would basically, you know, just auto attack and cycle through the targets to see how much threat he had on each one, and then choose the one with the most threat. And if one was damaged enough, I'm actually protection spec'd, so I can tank my own target until they die for the most part. And he seemed to be getting very, very upset that we weren't dying. He got that poor balanced druid killed a bunch of times because, you know, it was a paladin, and the druid thought, you know, hey, I've given him, and he would consecrate once, but then not again, which would, you know, give him just enough threat to keep stuff off the healer, but not enough to allow any AoE DPS. And you might get the idea that I had this like really cynical take on players in WoW, but to be honest, putting together what's essentially a do not group list, or, you know, a list of people that I want to avoid. I don't get into conflicts with these people. I rarely call them out. I try to get through the run, but if they're really bad, I'll leave. And then I just will avoid them in the future, you know. Nice thing about the smaller server is reputation matters, and a lot of the toxic people who've kind of destroyed their reputation here have moved on to a higher population server where they can get back to what it is they really want to do, which is basically assert dominance over other people and try to upset other people. And it is oddly similar to the sociopath model of old, where eventually they'd live in a town, but eventually they would, the reputation, people would understand, you know, what they're about, and they'd have to move to a new city, and then they'd destroy the reputation there, and they'd have to move to a new city. So it is almost like, you know, even though I don't think these people are actual, like, literal sociopaths, like I've said before, these things tend to exist on a spectrum, and they're on there somewhere. I mean, when you take your enjoyment, or your motives, your motivation for doing things is to induce suffering and misery in other people. You're on that spectrum somewhere. There we go. I don't like those guys. They stun. Plus, I think you get both if you attack that one guy, and I don't really want to do that. But my groups, as the server population has dropped, the quality of my groups keeps going up. Like, I actually very rarely have someone that I would call toxic or cryptotoxic or whatever terminology you want to use. I rarely run into these people anymore. And the funny thing is, I will see them in the looking for group channel, looking for groups. And apparently I get validated because I'm not, like, it'll be something simple like, hey, looking for DPS for heroic slave pens, which is basically your group fills up really quick because there's always DPS looking for easy badges. Oh, that's not good. There's a little issue with Yeah, that's... I hope that wasn't like that for very long. Let me... Okay. Okay. Things are good. Microsoft likes... I almost want to make a meme picture of NVIDIA shoving AMD, and Microsoft is doing that little thing where you get down on your hands and knees behind somebody so that, you know, they fall over when they get pushed. Do not want this. God damn it. Somebody's gonna get it from me. Come on, give me another residue. Give me another residue. Yay! I know I'm gonna aggro. Can I fear him? I cannot. Did I get them all? I got them all. I'm done. I'll give up. Oh, there's another one. Ah, another residue. Yay! I only need one more. That's awesome. A lot of times I'll get done with all the quests and still have like those to get. And it is fairly random. It only seems to be about a, I don't know, 20% drop rate when you're herbing. So for a lot of people, it's efficient to do that one I just did, and then go and do the bombing run so that you don't have to spend the time like healing up, because by the time you're done with the bombing run, you'll be back. And I learned something about the bombing run. People will sit here at the at Aryan Cloudbreaker, you know, the Shattered Sun Offensive bombing run guy, and they will wait for other people to come up and then try to launch right before them, so they'll basically ruin their day. But if that ever does happen, if you log out and log back in again, right this downhill. When you log back in, you'll make a beeline for like this spot where you're at right now, and then restart your bombing run. Which is kind of weird because you'll just like fly right through everything. And this coast, there are 4 or 5 each of mining nodes and herb nodes, and they each have their own 5-minute respawn timer. So you can gather quite a bit of adamantite, mana thistle, and nightmare vine. Not sure if there's other herbs here. But corium will also spawn, and there's the other one. So, if you get done with these quests and you haven't gotten all your herbs, or all your nether residue, you can pretty much just run up and down this coast. And there's a mana thistle. And there's one more mining node there. And there is... oh. I use the mouse to aim, but I got a turbo button. On the bomb. Yeah, just one more enforcer. And I'm done. This is kind of a cool quest. It is such a difference running with people who not only like actually know their classes, but they're not unconsciously searching for ways to bring misery to other people. And almost worse than the people that are being, you know, passive aggressive, you know, cryptotoxic, microaggression, whatever you want to call it, is the apologists, the people that make excuses for them. Like the people that refuse to acknowledge that these people seem to be surrounded by weird accidents that just happen to be screwing everybody else. I don't actually have that much to draw upon because things have been pretty good lately. I mean, other than there was one person, and it's kind of funny. There's this other guy who's like, likes to think of himself as like the preeminent smite priest on the server. But like most of them, they basically gear themselves like a mage or a shadow priest. And he's got like an item level of like over 130. He's got really good gear, and we were in a ZA where he could barely top me on damage, and he ran out of mana faster. And I know he remembered that because like he had to know like this guy who's basically in Karazhan gear is almost matching me, even though I'm in like SSC gear and Black Temple gear. I knew it had to irk him. So ended up in a group together in normal Magister's Terrace, and I said, hey, let's roll to see who gets DPS. And I won the roll, and I wanted to be conciliatory. So I said, hey, if you want, we can switch after each boss. And he's like, it won't matter. And he was pretty right in that his plan was to heal and still out DPS me. Unfortunately for the DPS, he wasn't going to heal them, or barely heal them. So the DPS were dying a lot. And considering that, you know, because I'd go up, you know, big pulls, I'd just go up and do a Holy Nova spam. I can do it for a lot longer than he can because he doesn't know how to build a Smite Priest. Oh, and the new badge gear has hit. There's several pieces with hit and spirit on it, which up until now has been super hard to find and is going to be awesome. But he got upset. He was actually beating me on most of the pulls, but he just like threw, and the tank was really well geared. So, you know, between our 2 Holy Nova spams and a renew that he'd put on the tank, it really, you know, the tank wasn't really much trouble. But as like if a DPS pulled aggro, he wouldn't switch and heal the DPS. He'd just let him die because beating me was just way too important. And then he got increasingly upset to the point where he just refused to heal me at all. That's such a bitch move. I've upset many people who tried the smite thing because they don't seem to understand that. Like, if you put a smite priest in a raid and then you surround him with all of the class buffs that maximize the smite priest, you can do pretty good. The test is actually if you're not getting any mana back from, you know, you're not getting Blessing of Wisdom, if you're not getting a Mana Spring Totem, if you're not getting Shadow Priest mana, if you're not getting like a Boomkin Aura, you know, if you're getting none of these things and you still can go a long fight without running out of mana and do decent damage, that's when you've got a good build. And that's what I can do. So a lot of those fights where he'd be completely spent or even run out of mana while during the Holy Nova spam, like without even drinking, 10 seconds after the end of the fight, I'm back up to full mana just on my insane mana regen. Just the fact that you'd be so upset that a much lesser geared smite priest was performing comparably to you that you would let other DPS die. Oh my god, I have not been hitting the thing. I need to drag that over. Don't despawn, don't despawn, don't despawn. Oh wait, I see one over there. Typically getting these first is a good idea because there's plenty of like wretched out here for the other quest. And I don't really have a whole lot of use for Mass Dispel. Oops. I forgot that I put another button. I don't have a whole lot of use for Mass Dispel out here, so I'll put the quest stuff over. I'll put the quest item in the place of my Mass Dispel button. Okay, so... There's a Wretched Fiend. And if I'm lucky... I don't need the mana. I just want to get him out of my face for a second. Do I have any of the... I don't believe I do. I could have sworn during vanilla these things had like a lot more health. They nerfed them. I remember the stuff you killed on the island, at least during vanilla, was, I don't know, not so weak. It was actually kind of tough. Gotta keep my eyes out because there's a couple herb nodes in this area. I don't think I've gotten any of them yet. Of course, the Alliance have, I don't know, it's like 5 or 10 to 1 Alliance on this server. So you'll see like Alliance flagged up here all the time. It's like, ooh, brave. When you have that kind of numerical advantage, it's... Oh, I'm having really awful luck with the drops on these. I guess I got them already. No remnants. No, I have not gotten any of them yet. I guess if I were going to give advice, I would say rather than keep a list of the people you enjoyed playing with, it might be simpler just to keep a list of the people that are showing yellow flags or Just for whatever reason, they keep finding reasons to make other people wait. That's the typical manifestation. Or they forget to do things. Hey, I have 2 mana remnants now. I seem to get resisted way too often, even though, you know, I'm definitely hit capped on these guys. I have like 15.8% hit on my smite. Which seems it should be, you know, happening like every, you know, once every like 100 casts, but it seems to be more often than that. Yeah, the after work rush. Damn it. Funny, I wasn't going to do a stream about the dailies, but it's like, man, I got to get my dailies done before I do that stream, and like, what if I combine them? I got a kill. I got my spirit tap going. I can afford. I'm surprised I haven't gotten a Surge of Light proc. Obviously, AoEing for 2 targets is a little silly. Oh, now it procs. But mana isn't much of a problem. Oh, I got them all. Cool. So I just need one more. What's it called? Nether Essence. Gotta keep my eye open for nodes. Funny, as soon as you finish that quest, those bastards are. Oops! God damn it! Wrong button. Some on my warrior, the trigger is jump, and on him the trigger is Prayer of Mending. You just come up to the big crystal and click on your 4 mana remnants. Turn in these 2 quests, go over and turn the others. Then I will head to the coast and get my last nether whatever thingy. These names are so similar, it's kind of hard to keep them apart. If people looked at my spec and my gear, they'd probably think I was retarded. Especially since I have 5 points in wands, but I discovered something with this, with the, excuse me, with my build. I can take myself down to, you know, run my mana completely out. And then if I summon my Shadow Fiend, wand, and activate my Bangle of Endless Blessings, which has a chance on hit to allow 15% of your mana regeneration to continue while casting for 15 seconds, which is significant, but that's a chance on hit. But you can activate it for 130 spirit. So if I activate the trinket, send the Shadow Fiend in, and then I just wand, I'm still maintaining like 300 or 400 DPS, but after 15 seconds, I'm back to full mana. It's almost like a It's almost like a longer evocate that does damage while you're doing it. And there's usually one over here. Somebody must have gotten it. But the thing about the herbs on the island is, at least the ones on the coast that I'm going to, is they have their own... I didn't think he came this far. They each have their own respawn. In other words, if you get one, if you herb something, in 5 minutes, it will be back in the same spot. And for the most part, you know, as soon as the bombing run started, people became aware of these. But it was really nice when the island first opened up, because nobody thought to look over here, because nobody had a reason to come over here, and I would just go up and down the island. You bitch. Come on, give me my another residue. Yay! And I am now done with my dailies. My hearth just, I believe it just became available. Man, I must have been streaming for like an hour and a half. So we'll go in and turn in the last quest, and I will be done with my dailies. I wasn't really paying that much attention to Magister's terrorist groups. But I am currently 10,997 out of 21,000, so I'm over through Revered. So I'll have less than 10,000 rep to go to Exalted. And the reason I want Exalted so bad is because the alchemy trinket, the stone, philosopher's stone, whatever you call it, has a crazy amount of spell power, and it increases... I could look it up. We're almost done here. And increases, I want to say by 70 or 80%. You get potion, like health and mana potions are boosted by, maybe it's 75%, which is pretty significant, especially with a build where the major downfall is mana. And I believe that is every daily. I'm the Expert Layman. Thanks for watching. You all have a great day.